It's crazy how ass this game is. I can't believe it. They didn't even try with making this game. This shit is a husk. I cannot believe that this game got 6 and 7s out of 10.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
This shit should have got a 3 at best. These are the worst Yu-Gi-Oh games of all time. Free. There's no way Destiny board could be worse than this. Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2004 came out in early February for both Japan and America, which is one of the first few times the release window from the Japanese release was that close. It's the first game to don the moniker of a World Championship game. From this point onwards, a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games start to lean towards being battle simulators more so than having a campaign like story mode. That's not to say that other type of Yu-Gi-Oh! Games just stop being made, but it takes a lot less effort to make games like this compared to a game like Capsule Monsters. And if you want to release something in a yearly fashion, it's best to take on projects and concepts that will take less effort and time to make. You already have a foundation to build on, might as well just keep on building on top of that. However, with that kind of practice, the quality of the games tend to dwindle, and you can definitely see that in this game. Now, this might be the first World Championship game, but it's certainly not the first battle simulator game. Eternal Duelist Soul is the game to have that title. I have not covered that game, but I did cover the sequel, Worldwide Edition. To me, I thought Worldwide Edition was a stand-up game. It had a nice balance of difficulty, interesting decks for the opponents, and proper pacing with an end in sight. That is why in some cases I'll be comparing this game to WWE. The two games share a lot more in common than other games. However, I feel like this game took several steps back without going forward much at all. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of this game, I want to give a short summary of an event that took place that involves this game. The Yu-Gi-Oh! 2004 World Championship.
Cooking soul.
Back in the day, Konami used to host tournaments for the GBA games. This started with Worldwide Edition and continued up to Ultimate Masters. There's a video on YouTube that goes more into details about these events. I suggest seeing it after this video when you get the chance, but the summary for this tournament is that they held a couple of events at certain locations. The finalists of these tournaments are invited to Worlds to play in the top cut. Now, I mentioned this tournament for a couple of reasons, but I'll get into those reasons later in the video. Just keep this tournament in the back of your mind. Now, like I said in past videos before, I think the World Championship games are a great alternative to play Yu-Gi-Oh! When you can't afford the game. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was an expensive ass card game, especially at this point in time. Is it easier for you and your friends to buy a DS and a World Championship game for about 100 to 200 max, or one Dark Arm Dragon for 300 in a game where the deck is worth more than the prize support? The World Championship games are also one of the best way to test out decks without having to go out your way to buy the cards. The issue with this game is that it's probably the worst Yu-Gi-Oh! Game when it comes to making decks that you want to play.
Finally!
I start the game, it gives me some cards, and it throws me right into the mix. And the very first thing I wanted to do was edit the deck. I need to see what cards they gave me. Now, I see that the chest says I have 120 cards, but whenever I click the change option, I wasn't putting cards from my chest to the deck. Instead, it would change to another deck. That's when I soon realized that instead of just giving me a bunch of cards, they gave me 3 decks. So I cleared out all of them. Most of the trap magic and monsters that I had, I wasn't really familiar with, so I got to reading some of this stuff. And what I came across was pretty funny. For starters, they gave me the letter N for the spirit board. But that's it. That's like giving me 1 Exodia piece. What's the use of this? And of all the letters, you give the black guy the letter N, huh? Another thing I found funny was the old card text.
Look at this. It's a fucking mess.
The effect of any card that can destroy spell or trap cards is cancelled, and the card itself is destroyed. Reading cancelled instead of negate in 2023 is crazy. What's more eye-catching is the any card that can destroy part. Normally, a modern card with this effect would read like this: if your opponent targets a spell or trap card with a card effect. But since this card says the effect of any card that can, I bet you money someone scummed some games out with this wording. You could tell the wording on this card was dog shit because they had to errata this card twice. Some cards straight up had the wrong effect due to translation issues. For example, Bazoo the Soul Eater. The original effect is that you can remove up to 3 monsters in the graveyard from play to increase the attack of this card by 300 points. However, the version we got was able to remove any 3 cards. That's not supposed to happen, and this reflects in the game as well, by the way.
This whole thing is just a mound of cockadookie.
Wording and text in Yu-Gi-Oh has always been one of the problems that gatekept newer players from playing the game properly for a very long time. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of weird rules and situations, but the reason why I bring this up along with the point of the card text is because a lot of things in Yu-Gi-Oh were not clear cut back then, and the World Championship games are the best way to see things with a more clear vision. That's why it's important for these World Championship games to uphold the rules and the cards and how they're supposed to be played and not have these mistakes. Now let's talk about the deck I was able to cook up with all these cards. Now Summon Skull is a given. Usually these battle simulator games usually give you 1 copy of that, but I was shocked to see a copy of Force Raider. You usually won't have much access to 1800, 1900 beast sticks until the mid to late game. Grave Robber is probably one of the best cards you can use for a while, not because the card itself is good, but because they don't give you many magic cards to work with. You must use Grave Robber to steal their good magic cards to use for yourself. Now apparently Grave Robber has a glitch where that if you steal a magic card from their graveyard, set it, and then activate it, you don't have to pay the 2000 life points. That's absolutely busted, and I highly recommend using this strat, especially for late game opponents. Mostly because I didn't abuse the glitch myself because I wanted to beat the game legit, but there was definitely times I almost got pushed to the edge. Dark Hole, Raigeki, and Feather Duster are sitting pretty in the deck. Usually they give you 1 of these, or maybe even 2, but not 3. They gave me 2 copies of Tribute to the Doom, which feels a bit unorthodox because I'm usually used to seeing copies of Fissure instead. I got Nobleman Extermination instead of MST, which on one hand has the chance to destroy all trap cards with the same name in the opponent's deck, but it's not a quick play spell card, so I can't play this on their turn. I also can only destroy face down spells and traps with this card. In the grand scheme of things, there was times where I'd rather have Nobleman than MST. Not because it's a better card or something, but because it's not a quick play spell. Huh? If you have any card in this game that can activate as a chain to an action, the game will always put everything to a halt and ask the dreaded question, do you want to activate this card? I get why it's asking, but it's the most annoying shit ever. Now Worldwide Edition, you can hold a button to stop the game from asking the question repeatedly. Apparently in this game you could do the same, but I call bullshit. Every time I held the button, it still asked me if I wanted to activate XYZ. Now if I hold the button before the duel starts, it speeds up the duel and the animations a bit. So if it's working for this, why won't it work the other way? Speaking of the speed boost, why not have the speed boost be the default speed in the first place? The original speed in this game is god-awful slow. This meta of Yu-Gi-Oh is already slow, and they slowed it down more with these animations and weird pauses. I was thinking at a point that maybe it was just me, but most discussions around this game will always mention the god-awful speed of the duels. Now one of the few good things is that they slowed down the scrolling speed of the background, thank god. It was super hard to look at in WWE, so this is one of the few good changes that this game has over that one. And you don't have to confirm your draw every turn like in WWE. The game draws the card for you at the start. You no longer have to fumble a bit just to draw a card. So the game gives you a few quality of life options to speed up the game a bit, but killed any goodwill by making the game horrendously slow. Now another thing I want to get into is the AI in this game. I'm making the claim that I think some of the WCS games and certain Yu-Gi-Oh games were half-baked and rushed. If you play WWE and this back to back, I guarantee that you will come to the same conclusion I did. The biggest reason is because the AI in this game is the biggest piece of dog shit. I just came off the heels of playing a game where the AI had no idea how to play the game in good faith. And to play another Yu-Gi-Oh game where they still cannot play the game right is damaging to my mental health. There are so many examples of bad play made by the AI, but the biggest ones have to do with the staples of the game. To give you a few examples, sometimes they will use Change Your Heart to take your monster and put it in defense mode, only to give it back to you at the end of the turn. I've seen them use Monster Reborn to revive a monster, only to activate Torrential Tribute to destroy their own monster. You know the AI has to be dog shit when there's a whole section on the wiki about how bad the AI is. Sometimes use this mystical space typhoon on itself? Bro, that's not even legal. never uses their Snatch Steal? That's crazy, because that means out of the majority of decks in this game, they have a dead card in the deck because the AI is just so fucking stupid. It's crazy how bad the computer is in this game when it has no reason to be this bad. Eternal Duelist and Worldwide Edition both had good AI, so what happened here? Now it's time to finally talk about the Tier 1 Duelist. Each Duelist has 5 stats: attack, defense, strategy, intellect, and luck. The attack and defense stat indicate the stats of the monsters in their deck. Intellect is a bullshit stat for reasons I covered earlier, and strategy does not really mean anything. Not to mention, I have my issues with the strategies used in this game. Luck is an indicator of how much the opponent will cheat and stack their deck mid-game. If you're ahead in any way, shape, or form, the game will make them frequently draw their best cards to give them advantage. The higher the stat, the more they cheat. There will be times where they draw their stable magic and trap cards back to back and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't outplay it. You can anticipate it and not overextend, but that's about it. Now, the next few segments are going to be me going over the Duelist. Over the course of this segment, I'll be showing what I feel would be decks better suited for them. You see, a lot of Duelists in this game have very uninspired and boring decks, but I'll get to them in a case-by-case manner. I want to do this mostly to show that it doesn't take much effort to come up with decks with interesting ideas and themes. It's important for these games to leave the player with not only a memorable experience, but also show them cards and strategies they have not seen before.
I'm dueling to win!
First on the chopping block is Tristan. His deck is absolute dog water, and you have no reason to lose to him at all. His deck name says it's high attack, but all of his low-level cards are 500 to 600 attack. At this point in the game, your cards are well over and beyond him. The monster that might surprise you every now and then is Goblin Attack Force, but he only has one copy, and that card forces itself in defense mode after attacking. He has about a 5 or so equipped spells, but his monsters are so weak they don't matter much at all. His deck has a little spark of something interesting by having random booty goblins and some strong spells, but instead of going all the way with that theme, they just slammed his deck with the worst cards possible. Well, at least you could grind them for cards.
Coming right at you, man! Up high or down low? I guess you're down low, bud.
So his deck is called High Attack, and he has a Goblin Attack Force, which is a self-destructive card by nature. So I decided to give him a whole deck of monsters with high attack, but they self-destruct in some way, shape, or form. Giant Rat makes his deck a lot more consistent by floating into cards that could potentially get rid of problem cards for him, such as Exile Force, which guarantees a kill by itself. Karate Man can boost itself to 2000 attack power, but it dies afterwards. And then there's Throwstone Unit. This is a very interesting card, and I've never seen this card before in my life before playing this game. By tributing a warrior monster, you could destroy a monster on the field with less attack than the card's defense. And with 2000 defense, this card can easily be on the board for a turn. Best case scenario, it's summoned by the rat, and then next turn you summon another monster. Swing at one monster, then use his effect afterwards to pop another monster. Admittedly, it's a bit awkward of a play, but it fits the theme of the deck. The main point of this deck is to show off as many interesting cards as possible while also making this deck as viable as I can for the tier it's in.
Because I'm not planning to lose.
Taya has a deck built around gaining life points, similar to the deck in WWE. The problem with her deck in that game was the fact that the life point gaining in that deck was super inconsistent.
There are some inconsistencies in their story.
Her monster cards were at least competent though. In this game, however, her life point gaining is ultra consistent. She does this easily with cards like Nimble Momonga and this Tapeworm. Nimble grabs 2 more Nimbles from the deck when it dies, and you gain 1000 life points each time one dies. The Tapeworm equips itself to a monster when it dies, and she gains life points equal to half the attack of the target every turn. There were times her life points went well beyond 10,000. Issue now though is that she has no win condition at all. So many cards to make her gain life points, but she does absolutely nothing interesting beyond that. In the last game, I criticized the fact that she had Fire Princess sitting in her deck doing nothing because she never gained life points. Now that she gains life points like crazy, I don't see that card at all, because she only has one copy of it in the deck. It would have been much more interesting to give her cards like Solemn Judgment and Imperial Order, cards that use life points to do powerful effects. That way, she has more reason to gain these life points and something to spend the life points on. But she just gains life points for fucking nothing.
What are you guys doing here? Are you trying to get me fired? Thanks a lot. Here, have some ketchup.
For Taya, I made a deck that revolves around life point gains and using it in any fashion. Life point decks in these games usually gain life points but do nothing with it. So I gave her cards that actually give her some advantage for using the life points she gained, like Dark Elf and Solemn Judgment. A card that's bigger than most low star cards with the cost of paying 1k of life points to attack with it, and a card that is well known to negate anything but at the cost of paying half your life points. In this version of the deck, the main win condition is Fire Princess, because she burns the opponent each time you gain life points. And with a card like Solemn Wishes, that makes it a whole lot easier. The Squirrel and the Mermaid also help with the life point games, and with the floaters, it makes it much easier to have one or two of these cards on the field. At this point, the main issue is their attack power. It's low as shit. So how do you fix this? There coincidentally is a card that not only can fix this problem, but also fits the theme of the deck of paying the life points that you gain. And that card is Messenger of Peace. For just a measly 100 life points, which by the way ain't shit, monsters with more than 1500 attack cannot attack. That means they can't swing at your Flame Princess or any of your other cards that help you gain life points. I had a lot of fun building this deck and playing with it, cause it actually worked.
You have no chance for victory!
Bakura's deck is kind of revolved around the theme of using Mahavilo and equip spells. While he does have 3 copies of Mahavilo and a legion of equipped spells to support it, the rest of his monsters are ass.
Stinky! That shit is ass, boy!
His deck cannot hold up the main goal at all, with the bulk of his lower level monsters having less than 1000 attack. He randomly has a Slate Warrior for some reason. If you can afford to give him a Slate Warrior, why not give him more middle of the road cards? Or duel can go south if he draws Mahavilo and any of the good equipped spells like United We Stand and Mage Power. There have been times where he threw 3+ equips on a monster, forcing me to stall till I drew a staple. But those moments are far and few in between duels.
Hell, get this thing off of me!
I made his deck have a lot more focus on summoning the big fiend monsters. Dark Necrofear is usually his ace card in most of these games. Decent stats and it has a cool effect, but a high summoning cost. 3 fiends have to be removed from the graveyard.
Huh? Yeah, that's what it says. That must be really good. Paper or plastic?
With a card like Painful Choice, it makes it a lot easier to summon this card. Hadaz is a card that Bakura is used in the anime, so might as well throw it into the deck. It has pretty good stats and the effect to negate monsters it destroyed. Some of the best cards at this point in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are flip effect monsters and floaters, so negating those kind of cards is a huge plus. I kept the theme of Mahavelo and the equips in the deck and added more equips to the deck overall. Wall of Illusions is a good wall. If a monster attacks it, they return right back to the hand. A card like this makes it way easier to summon Hades. Now most opponents in this tier don't have high attack beat sticks yet, mostly because the player doesn't have access to many yet. However, I think the Bistro Butcher in this situation is okay in this deck. It may be hard to kill at this point, but it has a negative effect of making the opponent draw 2 cards whenever it does battle damage. In the context of this game, it will fit perfectly for an early game monster for an opponent to use to give the player a bit of trouble on the board while also giving the player a chance to draw an out to the card. This deck was a lot of fun to mess around with, mostly because it just feels so fucking good to summon Dark Necrofear. It's also pretty tight to swing with Hades and negate cards like Sangan. Grandpa has an Exodia deck that never gets Exodia. Instead of getting Exodia, however, it will give him cards he needs to wipe your board constantly. I said earlier that the luck stat determines how much they cheat, and honestly, I'm not entirely sure about that because Grandpa cheats occasionally. He has Mystic Tomatoes to go into Sangan and the Witch. From there, he'll search for Exodia pieces. The problem in his deck is not the Exodia strategy, but his staple cards and his single copy of Blue Eyes. He has several cards that make him draw, such as Jar of Greed, Upstart, Pot of Greed, and Graceful Charity. These cards help him get to his power cards on top of the game cheating for him. Dark Hole, Raigeki, Swords, Change of Heart, Monster Reborn, Call of the Haunted, you name it. Whenever you're ahead, he will play cards to steal your monster and tribute it or revive his Blue Eyes after he threw it away with Charity or having too big of a hand. With the cards I have now at this point, there's very few ways for me to stop Blue Eyes consistently. It also doesn't help that the monsters you have are constantly getting wiped out by trap cards. 3 trap holes and 2 torrential tributes, and a mirror force being the cherry on top.
He's already dead.
This is overkill for a starting duelist. Now on the bright side, most of his cards are ass. But with how the game cheats, you will have to stick it out for several turns every time you duel him, because he's gonna continue to wipe your board every turn.
I am Exodia. I am gonna destroy you.
What the fuck?
His deck has the name of Exodia 1 because there's 3 Exodia decks in this game. The other 2 cheat like crazy, so I try to make this one as legit as possible. The deck is filled with cards that can make Grandpa draw, but the most interesting combo I added to the deck was Painful Choice and Backup Soldier. Backup Soldier adds 3 normal cards from the graveyard to your hand, and with Painful Choice he could throw away 3 Exodia pieces, Blue Eyes, and whatever else. That way he could use Backup Soldier to get 3 parts to his hand instantly. And with Blue Eyes in the graveyard, it makes it way easier for him to special summon it from the graveyard with revival cards just in case for alternate win condition. I actually lost to this deck once in testing because of the Backup Soldier combo. It's not a broken combo by any means, but it feels like something I would have seen on the playground.
I'm ready to fight on my own!
YuGiOh is on the same bullshit as Grandpa. The few differences being that instead of having Torrential Tribute, he has Snatch Steal. But like I said earlier, he never activates it, so dead card. He has a Magician of Faith that he draws too often as well. 1 copy in the deck by the way, but somehow has it every game. He has a Summon Skull, which is more problematic than Blue Eyes even though it has less attack. Summon Skull having 2500 and only needing 1 tribute puts it ahead so many cards of the game at the time. Now it's possible by this point that you have Heavy Storm and Feather Duster to get rid of obnoxious trap cards. However, he has copies of Magic Jammer ready to ruin your big plays with any magic card. I lost to Grandpa once and YuGiOh twice, which isn't a lot, but it's jarring to see that I could start losing this early into the game. I realized that the starting deck in this game is pretty lackluster compared to WWE because at least in that game I got cards like Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity. I have no way to get advantage back if I start to go behind in this deck. Thankfully, this is what the packs are for. Just like in the past games, you get a pack every time you beat an opponent. Some packs follow a theme, while others imitate real life sets. Now, after beating everyone in Tier 1, I encountered a problem. I didn't unlock a single Duelist. I beat them all 5 times, still nothing. Not knowing what else I can do, I head off to the internet. I usually don't do this for these kind of videos, but I had a feeling the progression requirements would be stupid. And I was right. To unlock the Tier 2 Duelist, you must obtain half the cards in certain packs. Each pack has a corresponding Duelist attached to it. The game doesn't tell you this, and there's no way to even track your progress with how many cards you got from certain packs. So you just gotta spam a pack until someone's unlocked. The issue is that some of these packs are absolute ass.
Garbage.
Some of these were packs in WWE with more or less the same content. There is a pack with nothing but ritual monsters, and it fucking sucks.
I'm nauseous. I'm nauseous.
No reason to get this pack in WWE besides Relinquish. But no, in this game you must get this pack upwards to about 7+ times to unlock Mako Tsunami. That is 7 to 10 duels down the drain. More if you're unlucky. Humongous waste of time that pads the game out like crazy. I'd rather just win 5 games and move on than 10+ games hoping that the RNG is on my side to make progress in this game.
What the fuck were they thinking?
Now in WWE, some packs were unlocked by attaining certain cards, so if you use the password system, you can unlock some packs early. I tried to apply the same logic with this game, but instead of unlocking packs, I'll be unlocking Duelists. There is no password system in this game. Absolutely trash. Now hold on. Remember the real life event I spoke on earlier in this video? Think about this. The only way to get cards in this game is by winning duels and getting packs. If there were specific cards and decks you wanted, you have to duel someone repeatedly. For reference, I have over 300 duels by the end of this game, with over 250 of them being mandatory by the way. And I didn't even come across half the cards people used in the meta at the time. Everyone who participated in those tournaments had to not only beat the game, which is a feat in itself that can take weeks of your time, but they had to grind certain duelists to get packs and cards they need. Not to mention that some of the packs require you to have an 80% win rate to unlock.
That shit is bananas.
Imagine if a Pokemon was locked behind your win-loss ratio of the Battle Factory. That's absolutely stupid.
Those were bad ideas and you should all feel bad.
Why would you not let your players use a password for a game you have a circuit for? Now, after playing the game myself, I have a theory that most of the players didn't even get their cards the legit way. I'm suggesting that they got some help from a local shark. And I don't blame them. It would take an ungodly amount of time just to make a meta deck in this game. If the company doesn't have the decency to spare your time just a little bit from grinding, why should you have the decency to do things the right way?
You don't understand.
Going back to talking about this game, I was able to unlock all the tier 2 duelists after 50 duels and getting each pack around 10 times.
This is garbage. It's beautiful.
I was able to change a few cards for some better cards at that point. I added Relinquish to the deck to have a bit more monster removal. Without Sonic Bird and Thousand Hands, it's not consistent at all, but it was better than a lot of the other cards the game gave me. Cyber Alligator is just as good as Summon Skull. YuGiOh is one of the biggest beat sticks in the game that walls off high attack monsters. I don't have any good high attack monsters at all, so I had to resort to using this weird ass card. It's great for closing out games fast, but terrible to have early in the duel. If I miss the coin cost, I lose half my life points. Late game, this is fine. If I have 3,000 life points, I don't mind losing 1,500. But I don't want to start the game and lose 4,000 right off the bat. I probably did more damage to myself than the opponent at that point.
Fucking stupid.
Giant Trune, Heavy Storm, and MST are always welcome additions to decks. So many opponents start to be bussy and have back row for days. You need a way to handle most of it. And I can't lie to you, it feels so damn satisfying whenever you blow their back row out.
Hey, yo!
What killed the dinosaurs?
Rex Raptor is usually sporting dinosaurs mixed with a few dragons in the anime and games. But for some reason in this game, they just gave him 3 copies of Two-Headed King Rex and called it a day. He's laughably bad at this point, especially since you'll probably have your hands on some better beat sticks by this point. What's weird is that they could have done so much more with his deck. Gilosaurus is in the game, along with some other dinosaur cards. They could have given him some troop dragons to make it easier to summon his 5-6 star dinos. Instead, he has a Billy deck that's completely uninspired and feels like a waste of time to duel. I wanted to play around with the idea of fusion some more at this point. Luckily, Two-Headed King Rex, Crawling Dragon, and Trachodon all have fusion cards that they fuse into. With a mix of Versago, it was more practical to summon practical.
Horrible!
I also added Red Eyes Black Dragon to the deck, not only because he was the original owner before Joey snatched it up, but also to fuse with Versago to make the iconic Meteor Black Dragon. Gaia is a field spell that increases the attack of Earth cards by 500. This makes it so his cards can start the range between 18 to 2100. It's a simple beat stick deck with a sprinkle of fusions to give it extra flavor.
The stars have declared that I will win.
Esperoba is one of the rare few opponents in this game that has a theme around their deck. His deck is based around clairvoyance and cards that revolve around that. Too bad the cards needed to do this are pretty dog shit. Cards like Shadow of Eyes and Light Intervention prevent you from having face down cards and activating flip effects. So it prevents you from using good flip effect cards like Jars or the Penguin. This would be scary if his deck had scary monsters. Like the last few losers, his deck has a bunch of shitty vanilla monsters. Although for some reason his deck is illegal. 2 Sangins for reasons? If it was 2 or 3 copies of the Witch, the cheating would make more sense. It makes it easier for him to search for Jinzo if he had the Witch, but I don't know what the fuck he's looking for with Sangin. His Sangin targets are so bad, I've seen him use Sangin to search for Sangin. He doesn't even have some of the monsters he had in the anime. Where the fuck is the Fiend Mega Cyber? Ocubeam? Spike Seadra?
I don't know who invited him, I didn't, but
Did the developers even try? See, decks like this is the reason why I set out to make my own shit.
It's showtime, and I'll summon Jinzo.
When thinking of a concept for Esperoba's deck, I had a lot of fun making the deck mostly because of looking for cards that stick to the theme of clairvoyance. To do this, I looked at a few cards that allowed the player to do things that have to do with the opponent's hand. For starters, I gave him the 2 big hand control cards. These allow him to see your hand and make you drop a card in the hand. Some debate that these cards are better than even the Liquid Duo because of the hand vision. He had a few cards that flip monsters face up and negate their flip effects. Thing is though, they did nothing else. So instead of that shitty card, why not give him something that not only flips the cards, but negates their effects and also inflict burn damage for each card flip. Ceasefire is a card that was also played in main decks in real life decks at the time, because the power of the jars was so volatile. A card I never knew existed that I added to the deck was this card called Ominous Fortune. You call a card type, and if you guess it right, you inflict 700 points of damage. Even if you guess wrong, they still have to show you the card to confirm the card type it is. So it's a win-win either way.
You're swimming with the sharks!
Now, the next few duelists might give you a run for your money depending on how often you get decent cards. Mako runs a deck based around the legendary Ocean, but it's the most surface level version of it. With the Ocean, he can lower the stars and the cost of his water monsters, which means a lot of the time he will be summoning legendary fishermen for free, and he actually has 3 of them. How come he has 3 copies of his ace card but little bro couldn't have 3 Genzos?
Hey, go ahead, concrete, yeah, that boy.
Even with Genzo on the limit list, it doesn't matter because his deck is already illegal with 2 Saiyans. Speaking of illegal decks, Mako's deck is illegal as well. See, Legendary Ocean always counts as Umi, which means if you have 3 Legendary Oceans in the deck, you can't add a copy of Umi. However, he has 2 Legendary Oceans and 2 copies of Umi. What? Mako and the last few tier 2 duelists are the first to start having a good chunk of 1800 beat sticks, which creeps up on you out of nowhere. You literally go from killing dancing elves and petite dragons to staring at 7-color fish in Lajin.
You a big motherfucker.
Anyways, Mako has his good old gimmick tornado wall. With this card up with Umi, he cannot take direct battle damage. Usually this combo is difficult to deal with in these games because it gives him time to draw his outs to clear the board. Torrential is the card to answer all his problems. Thing is, the AI is way too stupid to use Torrential correctly. I have seen times where the AI is literally winning the duel, it summons a monster and it blows up its own board. It'll be like 4 or 5 monsters dying for no reason.
Are you fucking dumb?
And if the card's just face down on the field, which is usually pretty obvious given that it's his only trap card in the deck, you can summon a weak floater like Sangan and bait the AI to use it.
Water sucks. Gatorade is better. What?
Usually they put Gravity Bind in these Ocean decks, but they didn't even attempt that here. So I actually turned his Ocean deck into a Gravity Bind Ocean deck. This is definitely a deck you used to see in the playground a lot because of the structure deck. I put a good number of water beat sticks in the deck while also adding more copies of high level monsters like the Amphibian Beast. With Legendary Ocean decreasing the level of the level 4 water cards, Gravity Bind will allow them to attack while you can't. Their changes are not too crazy, it's mostly things to add more consistency to the deck and also a win condition behind the tornado wall.
You already have 1 foot in the grave.
His deck name is Traps, but he only has 3 trap cards in the deck.
What?
I think it's clear that whoever the battle planners were just stopped giving a fuck at this point. The zombie kid doesn't even have a single zombie card in the deck.
Huh? Huh? Huh?
What the fuck? Did they even see the anime? In fact, this deck kinda reminds me of Bakura's deck in WWE. It's strikingly similar to the point I feel like they just copy and pasted the wrong deck. I do want to point out that for some reason Bones and Mako have a copy of Ryuran in their deck. I have no idea why they have this, but I will say that this card literally scrambles the AI's brain. I have seen them Monster Reborn Summon Skull and Premature Burial Lajin just to summon Ryuran. This shit's cooked. Him and Esperoba are the reason why I went on this journey to make deck concepts for the AI in a brighter timeline.
Welcome, Duelist, to the Arena of Lost Souls.
I made the theme of his deck revolve around Shadow Ghoul and Metamorphosis. With Pyramid Turtle, he can easily summon Shadow Ghoul for free. It gains 100 attack per monster in the graveyard, which isn't a lot, but with Painful Choice, it can make it easier to reach over 2k. Because it's level 5, he can use Metamorphosis to turn the Ghoul into the Reaper. This card cannot be destroyed by battle and can attack the life points directly. And when it does, it makes the opponent discard a random card. Spirit Reaper is also in the deck to help stall. Both cards have a weakness of being automatically destroyed when targeted by any card effect though. Dark Dust Spirit is a card that can wipe the whole board when summoned, however at the end of the turn it returns to the owner hand. Probably the best spirit monster in the game at this point.
Feast your eyes on my lovely insects!
Weevil Underwood is easily the biggest shit stain of the tier 2 bozos. Weevil's deck is the only deck in tier 2 to me that feels like some thought was put into it. He has several stable magic and trap cards that not only give him plays, but also consistency with cards like Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity. Honestly, every duelist in this game should have Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity. I have no idea why they didn't do that. It's uncomfortable to say this, but Weevil's the only one that beat me more than twice. But to be fair to myself, I did rush into most of the duels on autopilot since the whole game has been a brain dump. Still, he has a few cards in the deck that might be too much for you depending on when you play him. He was the first tier 2 opponent I fought, so fighting him made me realize my deck was ass.
Trash! Horrible!
First card to talk about is YuGiOh. I talked about this card earlier and stated that I had one in my deck. He has 3 of them, which you would think is a good thing. If he fails the coin toss, he loses half his life points. 2 more hits and he's done, right?
You act very much trap card.
Oh boy!
Well, he has 3 copies of Trap Hole, Torrential Tribute, and Mirror Force. I don't even have more than 1 Trap Hole at this point, let alone Torrential Tribute and Mirror Force. Because of the traps, it's hard to take advantage of the life point loss half the time. Now, if you have Heavy Storm and True Nade at this point, this won't be too much of an issue. But I fought him before making the changes to my deck, so I was struggling with all the back row hate. Now, anytime you see a face down monster card, don't even bother attacking it. Chances are it's either 4-star Ladybug or Man-Eater Bug. The Man-Eater Bug is not too bad, it only pops 1 monster and you could play around it a bit because of how the AI works. However, 4-star Ladybug destroys all face-up level 4 monsters.
Some of them going to sleep. Fuck that!
Most of your cards at this point are level 4. So you could get your back blown out just by flipping this thing.
Hey yo!
To add more salt to the wound, he has 3 copies of Needleworm as well. There have been games where I was down to my last 5 cards because of all the stalling and destruction. Now, if you attack first before summoning anything, it mitigates the amount of cards you lose from time to time. Also, it might be best to fight Weevil last after you get more cards like MST and cards that force his cards to flip face up. Nobleman of Crossout shits on Weevil's deck, but the pack that has it can only be unlocked if you beat Weevil 10 times. In fact, for every tier 2 duelist you beat 10 times, you unlock a pack. These packs are astronomically better than the first 5 they give you, and have enough range to make a deck based around a theme. You need to unlock these packs not only because they have better cards, but you need certain cards in these packs to play against tier 3 duelists. Each tier 3 duelist needs certain cards to be in your chest to play against them. Once you beat them 10 times, you unlock them. So for example, Bandit Keith is only open to play if you have Barrel Dragon in your chest. You must get it from the Barrel Dragon pack. Even if you pull it early, you can't play against Keith until you beat all the tier 2 duelists at least 3 times each. You also cannot play against Keith if you have a Barrel Dragon in your deck. Even if you have 2 copies of Barrel Dragon, with one being in the deck and the other being in the chest, the game will not let you duel them.
Oh, you motherfuckers.
Let's talk about the issues with this. Issue number 1 is pulling the card that's needed. It is down to almost pure chance on whether you get to see the duelist sooner or later after beating the level 2 duelist. The cards needed are rare, which is difficult to come by already. A rare is not guaranteed in every pack like real life boosters. You also can only get 1 at a time, so there's never a chance to open a pack and see multiple rare cards. You have to grind these packs to get the cards needed. It doesn't take too much to guess how shitty that was to do. Your duels are slow. The animations are slow. The progression is slow. The more I played this game, the angrier I got. This game fucking sucks.
Quite frankly, you need to go back to the drawing board because your game absolutely sucks!
When I first started making these videos, I thought Dark Duel Stories was the bottom of the barrel, but the more I played, the more I realized that Dark Duel Stories might be the middle of the road compared to these slugs. This game not only deviates so much from the status quo of progression in these games, but it also pads the fuck out of the experience. The fact that it took me over 350 duels just to see the credits is fucking asinine. That's practically quadruple the playtime of the majority of Yu-Gi-Oh games. One could say that they don't mind the huge number of duels if the duels were fun or challenging. It could get challenging, but fun? Far from it. The only good thing in this whole shit show of RNG is the fact that the RNG does tend to lean towards giving you newer cards more so than older cards. You can't get the same rare twice until you have every rare in the pack. That function is more like a double-edged sword, but at least there was an effort to curb the RNG in your favor. Keep in mind that the players who participated in the 2004 competition had to do everything I am doing thus far. At this point, I was motivated to make a decent deck from this grind at the very least. If I gotta waste my life away, might as well make something meaningful out of it.
Bitch, if I want to, I will.
This is an era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where archetypes are not really a thing. They exist, but I wouldn't call them good. Gravekeepers don't have Spy or Necro Valley in this game. And the Dark Scorpions, they fucking suck, except Don Zalug, he the god.
The one and only Gonzalug! And when I say one and only, I really mean it, because, my children, I am him!
So, instead of going for an archetype, I went for an element. One of the packs comes with a field spell that increases certain monster attributes by 500 attack, and another came with all elemental tutor cards. So now, all it comes down to is picking an element, and the element I picked was Wind. I got influenced by a special someone to play Harpies in the game, so I decided to make a Harpy deck, which is not the easiest thing to do in 2004. For starters, Harpy Lady is just a 1300 vanilla monster. 1300 is a dog shit attack stat, and having no effect makes this card terrible to draw.
Whoa, smell like shit!
Before I even had to entertain the idea of making Harpy Ladies, I first had to check if Birdface was even in the game.
I'm the biggest bird, I'm the biggest bird.
Birdface is the old card that searches for Harpy Lady when it dies in battle. With Birdman, I can add Harpy Lady to my hand without wasting a turn to draw it. It also thins out the deck too. Now Birdman is only 1600 attack, but with Rising Current I can make it 2100. Rising Current can even make my weak ass Harpy Ladies as strong as La Jin. Unfortunately, Terraforming is not a card yet, and I have no idea what old school card searches for field spells. With that in mind, I try to add as many tutor cards as I can that could comfortably fit in the deck. This is what the deck ended up looking like. 3 Harpy Ladies to combo with the 2 copies of Elegant Egotist I had. This way you can summon Harpy Lady Sisters from your hand or deck. Why not the graveyard too? Also, why are the stats on this card so dog shit compared to most other cards?
I don't know.
I always felt like this card should have been 2500 at the least. Shit, at least reverse the stats. You can't tribute summon for Harpy Lady Sisters, so this card has always been an absolute dead card in my hand, and I never wanted to draw this shit.
This card is useless.
The game, knowing that I don't like drawing this card, made me draw the card half the time. Cybertech Alligator is Summon Skull but with a wind element. So this way I had a 3k beat stick whenever I summoned it with the field spell.
God damn, that's a big bitch.
Only problem is that I can't search for it with Witch of the Black Forest because its defense is too high. But eventually this problem is solved by adding Jinzo to the deck later on. I have Mystic Tomatoes to go into Sengen and the Witch, which in turn search for Jinzo in any of the jars. Speaking of Jinzo, it's in the deck, however it's limited to 1. Can't use it for a specific opponent, but I'll get to that later. Jinzo shuts down so much dumb shit in this game, however he never gets his chance to stay on the field too long. Because of the deck stacking the AI does, as soon as Jinzo hits the field, the game tries to make the AI draw an out to it immediately. Still, even with that kind of bullshit happening in the inner workings of the game, it's best to summon him when you have the chance. So many revival cards are available in this meta, so you can always bring them back easily. Fi it's in the deck because it can boost the attack of wind monsters by 500. This combined with the field spell can make all my monsters gain 1k in attack points. I usually pull this off by having Flying Kamakiri die, which can summon a wind monster with 1500 attack or less from the deck. Kamakiri can also special summon Harpy Lady in case I have Elegant Egotist in hand. Magician of Faith to get back powerful magic cards, specifically Pot of Greed. Fiber Jar just adds a lot more consistency to the deck and is like an emergency button whenever things go bad. And Cyber Jar because Cyber Jar is one of the dumbest design cards I have ever seen in my life. It's not that it sucks, it's not that it's good, it's completely random and extremely volatile. It flips the whole game state on its head without even trying, with no effort whatsoever. There have been times where they attack my Cyberjar and I draw 4 monsters and they lose the next turn. There have been times where they attack my Cyberjar and they get 4 monsters and they win. It becomes a complete minigame of randomness. You just have no idea what's going to happen whenever this card flips face up. Now the rest of the deck is filled with power cards that I've spoken on way too many times. But there's one card I want to talk about that you will absolutely want to have so this game doesn't aggravate the fuck out of you. Imperial Order. For the big price of 700 life points per turn, you can negate the effects of all magic cards. First off, what a dog shit card design. Why does it only cost 700 to negate a whole card type that takes up 40 to 50% of most decks? Royal Decree is fine because trap cards normally take up about like 3 to 5 slots in a deck, but magic cards usually take 15 to 20 slots. Drawing trap cards isn't that useful most of the time because they're made in a way that they prevent problems, not solve them. Some of them do, like Mirror Force, but that's more of the exception, not the rule. Magic cards most of the time in most game states are much more useful to draw than most other card types because of the way most of them are designed. So, to have the ability to flip over a card and say half your deck is fucking useless is crazy.
Sit your $5 ass down before I make change.
The best part about this card is that you can turn it off at the drop of a dime. You don't have to pay the 700 life points. You can literally flip it on their turn, say no to their shit, and on your turn, just throw it in the graveyard. You don't have to pay it. This card is the reason why future floodgates don't have the ability to just flip them off. The other reason why Imperial Order is absolutely insane in this game is because the dog shit AI. Even when you have this card face up, the AI will try to activate magic cards like a dumbass, only for them to just get negated. This game is so half-baked. Whenever I hear things like, remember when games used to be complete, I miss the good old days.
Nah, that ain't it, y'all.
Let me break that shit for you. They only felt complete because you and I were kids and we didn't notice these kind of things in the game. When you start playing a good chunk of these older games, you start to realize this problem of half-baked games persisted not only in just recent years, it was always a thing. There is no way all of these games were gonna feel complete in every aspect when their release schedule was so ridiculous and didn't leave any room to quality check these products.
Boy, ain't no fucking way, boy.
Playing this game and DDM back to back almost burned me out just from how boring they are.
We meet again, Yugi boy.
Well, it's time to fight the tier 3 duelists, and the first on the chopping block is Pegasus. I chose him first because the pack with Birdman is locked behind the Guardian Sphinx pack, so I still gotta play with my old deck just for a little bit longer. Now you heard me go on multiple tangents about the dog shit AI. Now this guy is known for his Toon deck. Do you think the AI has any idea how to use Toons?
Hell no!
Toons were so dog shit when they first came out. You can tell Konami did not want these cards to break the game whatsoever. Most Toon cards can only be special summoned if Toon World is face up on the field. Toon World is a perma magic card that takes 1,000 life points just to activate it, and it sits around and does nothing. Because of this, his deck ends up being ultra inconsistent. Oftentimes his hand is stuck with Toons that he can't even summon, or Toon World with no Toons. It also doesn't help that the AI will activate multiple copies of Toon World, even if it already has one face up on the field.
Nasty bitch.
For this guy's deck, the developers knew Toons were absolute ass, so they tried to give his deck a power boost by throwing in some staple monsters. This is the most uninteresting solution to the problem. It would have been nice if they could have struck a healthy balance between the character's anime deck and trying to make it as viable as possible. The player's not going to have a competent deck at any time soon, so you might as well be creative with the decks the AI have. Not just throw in Slate Warrior and Force Raiders in every single deck from this point on. Worldwide Edition also has the same problem, but by the time it erupts, the problem doesn't stick around for long. You beat the game by then. But in this game, almost every run from this point on has these cards. I'd understand the thinking if other beast sticks didn't exist, but at this point of Yu-Gi-Oh, cards like Don Zalud, Kaiko, Bazoo, and multiple other useful cards exist, but they're not cited at all. How is this supposed to represent the meta of the World Championships in any shape or form at all? How is a kid going to figure out that these cards exist if you don't show them these cards?
It is totally insane!
It's not like the internet was a big thing at the time. Half the time, I only knew what cards existed from Pojo magazines, and you can't even get some of these good cards till damn near end of the game. Let me also point out from this point on that the most powerful Magic and Trap cards are present in multiple decks, except Pot of Greed and Graceful Charity a majority of the time. This means that some of the decks tend to be extremely inconsistent in their goals. The most interesting part of his deck is Relinquish. At this point of Yu-Gi-Oh, most ritual cards blow ass, but Snake Eyes here is the exception. Metamorphosis is in the game, and it's at 3. It trades a monster on the field for a fusion monster with the same level, so they could have easily gave Pegasus a deck with the ability to summon Thousand Eyes Restrict, but nope, let's just throw Voice Raider and Slate Warriors into the deck. I find it funny that they tried so hard to make the Toon thing work by adding life point recovery cards to his deck like Nimble Bamunga and Enchanted Javelins. I don't think you could make a playable Toon deck until the Zexal era. So it probably would have been best if they focused more on Relinquish than the Toons.
I see you quaking in your boots.
Bandit Keith is so ass, and no amount of cheating can change that.
It's true.
The good part about his deck is that instead of just throwing in Vorce Raiders and Slate Warriors, they gave him some beast sticks that actually fit the theme of machines like Mechanical Chaser. They also gave him 3 Premature Burials. I think it's to mimic the Time Machine card he had in his deck in the anime, or something. What sucks about his deck is that they gave him a shit ton of high cost monsters that he can't summon from his hand with ease. Some of these are not even his cards.
What the hell is this?
Why the fuck is Gaia the Fierce Knight in his deck? Yeah, let me equip warrior monsters with 3 copies of 7 complete. This looked like the kind of deck your elementary friend made to play you before school started in the morning. You know the deck. The 60 plus cards with no sleeves and a rubber band to hold it all together. The funniest shit about his deck is this Gamble card. This is what I mean when I say a lot of cards are just straight up dog shit. This card can only be activated if the opponent has 6 cards in the hand and you have 2. So this card can only activate on the first turn if you go first. Go second and this card is a brick, and he has 3 of these in his deck. You can build a whole ass house with this many bricks. If you do somehow activate this card, you have to flip a coin. If you call it right, you draw 5 cards. If you call it wrong, you skip your next turn. These niggas cooking Lunchables with these card designs. I get that it stays in theme with the character Bandit Keith since he's a gambling man, but like, out of all the gambling cards, you chose this pile of dog shit?
Let's let our cards do the talking.
Before I talk about some of the cards in Joey's deck, this is one of the first opponents that starts using half of the staple monsters that they splash into every deck without much thought. Spear Dragons, Umbira, Goblin Attack Force. I get the fact that most of these decks will have staples like Sangan and the Witch.
However,
where the fuck is Kaiko? Where the fuck is Exile Force? What the fuck, why is Voice Raider everywhere? If you're gonna put in staples, at least let it be real staples. In this situation, I wouldn't even question Joey having 3 copies of Exile Force since it's a warrior monster. Maybe even Zombira because it's a warrior card, and I think most people associate warriors with Joey. But Spear Dragon?
who invited you?
Is that supposed to be a sub for Baby Dragon? Now, in order to duel Joey, you have to have Jinzo in the chest. If it's in the deck, the game will not allow you to duel him. Because of this, you might be open to his trap cards, but if you play it smart, it doesn't matter. The AI is way too dog shit to worry about mind games with trap cards. Speaking of Jinzo, he has one himself, which could actually be problematic. He doesn't have Sangan or Witch, so he has to hard draw it. This makes the copy of Jinzo in his deck feel like it's not even there. He has 3 copies of Summon Skull and 1 Red Eyes. And with several copies of Poly, it's pretty clear that he wants to summon Black Skull Dragon. Unfortunately, this strat is nowhere near consistent enough for this to be decent, even though he summoned it on me once.
Thank you for showing me this before I died.
If they put Versago in the deck, it would have made it a lot easier to summon the dragon. But as it is now, without the proper cards to search this card out, the deck is ass. The cherry on top of all this shit is Time Wizard. He has 3 copies of this dumbass card, and I swear to God he calls the coin flip right every single time. Maybe it's just my luck, but fuck this card. At the very least, they gave Joey 2 copies of Graceful Charity. But why give him 2 copies of Graceful Charity but not also 2 copies of Reinforcement of the Army? The majority of his deck is warrior monsters. How did they not do something so simple? It's a no-brainer.
It don't make no motherfucking sense.
Definitely in the mood for a duel.
Now, in order to fight Mai, you have to have Harpy's Feather Duster in the chest. You cannot use one in a duel. Because of this design, they were a bit more trap friendly with her. Several copies of Ring of Destruction, the Gate Attack, and Mirror Force. She has Aqua Chorus in the deck to increase the attack of cards sharing the same name on the field. This is mostly for the Harpies, but honestly, I don't think this card makes sense in this deck. For modern Harpy ladies, this would be a cool little gimmick since most new Harpy cards count as Harpy Lady on the field and in the graveyard. But it doesn't make much difference to have this card in the deck for Mai versus someone who has 3 Force Raiders. Harpy Lady Sisters doesn't count as a Harpy Lady face up on the field or in the graveyard, so it doesn't add much to Aqua Chorus either. Speaking of the Harpy and Harpy Lady Sisters, she has 3 of both of them. Now, I listed the issues I have with Harpy Lady, but I have to list the issues of Harpy Lady Sisters again, because this card fucking sucks way too much not to talk about. Shit stats for how out of the way it is to summon this thing. You can't tribute summon it. Can't be revived from the graveyard unless you summon it properly first, and it doesn't even count as a Harpy Lady, so you can't use Elegant Egotist on it to summon another copy of Sisters from the deck like most Harpy Lady decks can do nowadays. This card is so ass, and they had the bright idea to add 3 copies to her deck? She only needs 1, and if her deck wasn't enough of a brick house, they added 2 copies of Harpy's Pet Dragon and Gaia. Why the fuck is Gaia the Fierce not here again? I feel like Gaia was supposed to be another card or some shit in Mai and Keith's deck, but they fucked up somehow. I'll say the one positive thing about her deck is the fact that she uses a field spell. It's the same one I use to increase the attack of wind monsters. The more I look at her deck, the more I find it funny that it would have been a better deck if they took the majority of her signature cards out of the deck. Now, if you want to unlock the characters to use their key cards, you have to beat all of them 10 times. This unlocks them and unlocks a pack. Now, if you beat each one 7 times, a Ghoul appears in the menu. At this point in the game, if you duel a Ghoul and beat him, you have to duel another Ghoul and continue beating more until the end of it. Once you beat all of them, you fully unlock Tier 4. All Tier 4 Duelists are Rare Hunters. This is the halfway point of the game, and I'm not gonna lie, I almost dropped the game during Tier 3. But seeing the Ghoul pop up in the menu just gave me a spike of dopamine and motivation. And the motivation was thrown right out the window when I fought Arcana. Now remember that the game cheats for the AI pretty often. The thing is though, the past few decks in the game so far haven't been too crazy. However, with Arcana's deck, oh shit! Not just him, but from this point on, the AI not only has the system to cheat for them, but they also have multiple copies of limited cards. I don't know if it's worth mentioning Arcana's monsters, not only because the majority are not interesting and make no sense to be here, like why the fuck is Garuzi's here? But also because the elephant in the room is all the stupid amounts of power cards he has in his deck. 3 copies of Change of Heart, Darkhold, Raigeki, Monster Reborn, Burial, Snatch Steal, damn near every powerful magic and trap card. Every turn he draws one of these stupid cards and he either wipes the board or steals my shit. Lucky enough, the AI refuses to use Snatch Steal, so that's like 3 bricks in his deck. Not to mention, he has all these revival cards, but no way to summon Dark Magician. Not even a way to throw it away so he could use Monster Reborn for Dark Magician. Cheating with all these cards and you still can't build a deck right. Like what use is a Monster Reborn when you have nothing in the graveyard?
You let me down, man.
Seeger has the classic Exodia deck. And we're talking Legacy of the Duelist levels of bullshit.
It's great.
What?
3 of every draw card, 3 of every Exodia piece, 3 Sangins, 3 Witches, the whole 9 yards. And I lost to him twice. He has copies of Raigeki, Darkhold, and Mirror Force. So there will be times where you think you could rush him down with a big board only to lose it all because the game will stack the power cards on top of his deck. It's not like you have much choice to play around the power cards either. You can't afford to give him any space in any capacity. Not much else to say about him besides he's a cheating piece of shit and that you gotta knock him out ASAP. Next was Loomis and Umbra. So they try to pull off a Masks theme with this deck, but there's 2 problems with this. 1, half of the mask cards suck. Mask Attribute is hyper specific. It prevents either player from tributing monsters. Now in real life, this card was useful as a side deck card against decks that tribute summon and ritual summon a lot. But not every deck summons monsters like that often, so this card ends up being a brick a majority of the time. Mask of Weakness is decent. It decreases the attack of a monster by 700, but this card's effect is outdated as fuck even for 2003 standards. There is a mask that increases the attack power of one monster by 1000 points. Even though it has a drawback, you know how drawbacks are in Yu-Gi-Oh! They're practically non-existent. However, why run this card when you could run something better like Mage Power or United We Stand? You're starting to see the picture here, right? All of these cards either have to rely on your deck's playstyle to even work, or they straight up are outclassed. Majority of the monsters are not worth mentioning because they splashed in the usual suspects to make the deck mediocre at best. I guess these two mask cards match the theme of the deck. With the Sorcerer, he could equip the mask to it to make it 1900 attack, so I get why it's here and I see what they wanted to do, but that shit never happened. He also has these two monsters. Now the point of these cards is to summon the masked Death Guardians. The problem is, it's not in this game, so I have no idea why they went half-assed with this deck that is clearly made for Death Guardians. They could have thrown in more cards like Kaiko since he has a mask, just to stay in theme with the deck, I guess. But I hope you see now why I started to lose faith in this game being interesting at all. No. Anyways, Odeon the Trapmaster's back again, and what, you want me to talk about strings? Look at his deck and tell me if I should waste my breath on this bullshit. He doesn't even have Revival jammed. Fuck this, I'm not talking about his deck.
That shit stinks.
Now, let's get back to my man's Odeon.
I shall bury all who stand in my way.
Every destructive trap card that you could think of, he probably has it. Ring of Destruction, Widespread Ruin, Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, anything. However, since most of his deck is just trap cards, he doesn't have much of the ability to destroy your magic and trap cards. So that means that you could just flip up Royal Decree and call it a day. Now, if you remember WWE, you remember that Jinzo beats the dog shit out of Odeon. But in this game, that's not the case. Because of the stacking that this game does, if you summon Jinzo, oftentimes he'll just draw Darko or Raigeki and get rid of it. Now you might think, why not use something like Harpy's Feather Duster and Heavy Storm? And that can work, but he has several copies of Magic Jammer, so it's not consistent. And if you think it's already risky to attack him, he has several copies of Maneater Bug and Cyberjar. And the rest of the monsters, take a guess. Take a wild guess. Take a wild guess what other cards they put in his deck. You'd think they would give him more copies of Mask of Darkness, but nope. I was so close to saying that they tried their best with this deck, but as soon as I saw Spirit Dragon, my brain clocked out.
Such fear in your eyes.
Once you beat all the rare hunters, the one and only pops up. And if you beat him, you unlock all the others. Merrick's deck is a mix between Hand Destruction and Burn. He has this trap card called Magic Thorn that burns you for 500 every time you discard a card. And he forces you to discard cards with magical hats, which when it does battle damage to you, you have to discard a card. The thing is though, this card is really weak. But because of how the game works, there could be times where that he draws Raigeki because, you know, the game cheats, plays it, and then attacks with magical hats. Several copies of Morphing Jar to make you discard more cards, so if you discard 5 cards off rip, you lose in about like 2500 life points. And as the game goes on, you'll find yourself in situations where that you can't keep monsters on the board because he has several copies of Maneater Bug, Cyberjar, and Morphing Jar too. But the worst part in all of this is the fact that he has one of the best cards in Yu-Gi-Oh history, and that's the Liquid Duo. For a measly 1000 life points, he could discard 2 random cards from your hand. That's it. It's as simple as that. Easily one of the best cards in the game with such a simple effect. Just a simple 1000 life points just to cut 1/3 of their hand. We have to establish here that paying life points in Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't mean shit. Even if this card costs us 7,000 life points to activate, people will still play it just on the merit of drawing it on the first turn means you automatically win. Most magic and traps that have something to do with discarding a card from the hand usually land on the list. You can see examples even in recent years with cards like Appointer of the Red Lotus. Also, did I mention that Merrick has 2 copies of the Liquid Duo? There have been games with Merrick where he would have both of these cards on the first turn and activate both of them on the same turn. And honestly, I just turned the game off. I'm not letting him get a win off this bullshit. Especially when his deck actually fucking sucks. Most of the time he breaks, and it's because his deck flirts around with multiple strategies at once. It wants to burn, it wants to mill, it wants to do hand destruction. It's so weird. He doesn't have Yatagarasu or Danzalug, so he doesn't have much that helps him with hand destruction. but for some reason they thought it was a good idea to give him Bystro Butcher? Bystro Butcher? This god-awful card that makes your opponent draw 2 cards? What was the point of giving him cards to do hand destruction if you're just gonna make him draw cards? His deck wants to mill too, so they gave him Morphin Jar and Needleworm. I guess if you was to play Devil's Advocate, you can say that Bystro Butcher helps with thinning out the opponent's deck so you can mill him out faster. But you and I both know that's really fucking stupid. I'm not even gonna entertain why that's stupid. Well, this is it. I'm almost at the end of the game. With the exception of Merrick, the way to unlock the rest of the Duelists in level 5 is by beating all the level 4 opponents 10 times. On top of that, each level 5 Duelist also has another requirement. So, in order to unlock Kaiba, you must defeat Bakura, Mai, Joey, Odeon, and Ishizu 10 times. And to unlock Shadi, you must defeat Yugi, Merrick, and Kaiba 10 times. Now, if you listen correctly, I mentioned Ishizu. She's a level 5 Duelist as well. How do you unlock her? Take a guess. No, like, I'm actually gonna do some Dora the Explorer shit with you. I want you to sit there, think for about like a good 5 to 10 seconds, and come up with an answer in your head. Then I'm gonna tell you the answer, and you decide for yourself how close you were. Alright, you got your answer? You ready for this bullshit? In order to duel Ishizu, you must have nothing but monsters in your deck. No spells, no traps.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
This is a Gamefaqs game. It's literally a Gamefaqs game. There's no way you would know this. There's no way. I'm not convinced that anyone knew to do this when they played this game in 2003. They want me to build my deck like Joey does.
Joey, your deck's filled with nothing but monster cards.
You got it. I packed it with every butt-kicking monster I could find.
Oh my god, bro.
This really is a Gamefaqs game. Most of the unlocks, there's no way you can figure it out. I had to look them all up. It's never beat the Duelist 5-10 times. It's always beat them 5-10 times and also do this weird arbitrary thing that you have to do, and also we don't track that progress of it. Now with all of that out of the way, let me talk about her first, since she's the first person you have to beat in order for anything to progress.
You and I were destined to duel.
So I want to make it clear that they call her deck a lightning deck, but her deck has nothing to do with lightning.
Hello?
Like, when you look at this, you would think that she has Thunder Dragon and what's her name, Nian, but that's not in the deck at all. I have no idea why they called it lightning. She even has an extra deck apparently, but she doesn't even have polymerization, so I don't know what the fuck they were doing with this deck. Like, I think she has a St. Joan in the extra deck that she could just never summon. The deck design in this game is so weird. It's like they were making spaghetti but forgot the spaghetti sauce. Her deck is actually a life point deck that's a lot more well-rounded than Taya's, I guess. But the bar is already in hell, so I don't know if that's saying much.
That's on me. I set the bar too low.
And of course, with all good things in this game comes the bad. They just couldn't stink up the deck, huh? Why the fuck is Bright Castle in here? Really shitty ass equip spells? This is level 5 out of 6, and you have Ishizu with Bright Castle?
Fuck y'all niggas!
Come on, man. I'm at the end of the game. Why the fuck are you making decks like this? Speaking of bad, Life Absorbing Machine is one of those cards you read as a new player and think it may be okay, but it's one of the most dog shit cards ever. During your next standby phase, you recover life points equal to the amount you paid. So if you paid 4,000 life points for Solemn, you gain 4,000 back next turn. Issue number 1. You don't gain the life back plus, just the amount you paid, so you never really get a plus out of this. The only way you could get a plus out of this is if you have 2 of them face up on the field. But that's not something that will happen often since you have to hard draw this card. Issue number 2. Since you get life points back next turn and not the same turn, you can literally die before you get those life points back. Why even limit the card like this? It's already hyper situational as is. Early card design is so dog shit and limiting at random times, it just feels like it's for no reason. Now, I'm not gonna lie, when I first started dueling her, I was having some problems. Mostly because making a deck full of monsters is challenging. You would think you would just splash all the best monsters into the deck and then that's it, right? Wrong. First off, you're gonna run out of a hand real fast because there's not that many monsters that do draw power. And also the fact that she still has access to magic and trap cards, so you can't just win on might alone. The way I got around to beating her often was making a deck full of nothing but tutor monsters, monsters that boost certain elements, and the best monsters of those certain elements. So for example, I would have Mystic Tomato, Sangan, the Witch, And then I will have dark monsters like Dark Elf, and also the booster from the deck that could be searched by Mystic Tomato like Witch's Apprentice. And I did this with 4 elements. So with dark it's like Mystic Tomato, Sangan, the Witch. With light it's the Shining Angels, Hoshininjin, Scale Angel, things of that nature. Earth is like the Rat into Nimble Momonga, Milus Radiant. Water is Mother Grizzly, Starboy. You start to get the picture here, right? With this kind of deck, it was able to keep up the pressure after constant board wipes. And I also low-key think that this deck can actually beat the majority of opponents in this game since most of them have dog shit decks.
Call me the king of games.
Next up is Kaiba, and Kaiba is probably the only opponent I don't mind having Spear Dragon and Force Raiders, cause they're practically his cards. The problem is that it felt like I already dueled Kaiba multiple times so far. Now Kaiba's deck looks like the standard beat stick deck in 2003. The only difference between his deck with these cards and everyone else though is the fact that they don't try to shoehorn too many dumb cards to lazily stay in theme. The thing that drags down Kaiba deck in this game, just like in WWE, the top heavy cards. And the funny thing is that the issue in this game is worse than the last game because for some fucking reason they gave him 2 barrel dragons. Why? You would think they would add Loader D and Fluid Summoning Dragon to the game at this point to make Blue Eyes a bit more playable, but nope. Let Kaiba die with several bricks in hand and no fast way to summon any of these dragons. He does have several copies of Monster Reborn and Premature Burial, so if they gave him something like Graceful Charity, it would have been a lot more bearable. But just like in the last game, he has no cards that give him draw power. At this rate, do you really think that the people who made this game gave a shit about it? It's really weird that they went from putting a lot of love and passion into a game like Reshuffle Destruction, but not that same effort with a game like this. Maybe the release schedule just made them not give enough of a shit to construct a game to be fun and memorable? Who knows and who cares, just pump the game out as fast as you can so you could put it in the circuit. Kaiba does have one card that could give you some problems if he draws it, and it's sacky as fuck just like in real life, Cyberstein. His win condition is literally the random Stein because he has no way to search for this card. No Sangan, no Witch, no nothing. What the fuck they were thinking making this shitty ass deck? Funny thing is that this is practically the same deck he had in WWE. The only difference is that in that game, sometimes the game will cheat for him and give him a hand of Cyberstein and Megamorph just so he could OTK you. Now they say in the Japanese version that's more guaranteed, and in the English release that's not much of a thing, but I don't know, I have the footage and it felt like 6 times out of 10 that combo would happen. So if you acknowledge that you had to cheat in order to make his deck decent in the last game, why not meet me in the middle and just give him cards that make his deck work like the Witch, Sangan, Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity. Fuck, you already made the Rare Hunter cheat, you might as well make Kaiba cheat and make him have... In fact, he's already cheating. He has 3 Monster Reborns and Premature Burials. What the fuck am I saying? Just give him 3 Cybersteins, fuck it. It's such a shame to get this far into the game to duel Kaiba only for him to be so ass. It's crazy how ass this game is. I can't believe it. They didn't even try with making this game. At least with something like Reshuffle Destruction, as dumb as that game can be, there's a lot of heart and soul in it. This shit is a husk. I cannot believe that this game got 6 and 7s out of 10. This shit should have got a 3 at best. This game is so fucking boring. I had to make decks for the game to make this video interesting. I cannot believe 2 games back to back are just absolute pieces of shit.
That shit is a 2-pack of ass.
I almost burned myself out. This is crazy. These are the worst Yu-Gi-Oh games of all time. Free. There's no way Destiny board could be worse than this. This shit is not fun. The computer can't even play the game right. The progress is slow. Everything is Gamefaqs knowledge. And the opponents and the challenge of the game sucks absolute shit. Force Raider, Slate Warrior, Goblin Attack Force, Spear Dragon, what the fuck? Did they not know what an Exile Force was? How the fuck are you gonna have Reinforcement of the Army as semi-limited and not give anyone Reinforcement of the Army? You know this card is good, so why the fuck did you not give anyone this card? Now if you beat Kaiba the appropriate amount of times, you get to duel Shoddy. The thing about Shoddy is that he's not really a duelist, but for some reason they shoehorn him in every game possible. The issue with this at times is that it's hard to make a deck for him because he never had one. So they usually try to go for an Egyptian theme with his decks, and it's never really consistent, it's always dramatically different. Shoot, in Worldwide Edition, he didn't even have a deck of his own, he just copies someone else's deck. The closest you could do with him usually in these games is to tag him on rock cards or cards that have an ancient Egyptian theme, but does anything in his deck represent that? Let's just ignore the fucking monsters, because he does have a theme with his magic and trap cards. Now, over the course of the games that I had with him, I realized slowly that he has a burn deck. He has copies of Chain Burn, which burn you for damage every time you play something. Attack and Receive, which burns the opponent more, depending on how many copies of this card is in the graveyard. Ceasefire to burn the opponent for each effect monster, and copies of Ring of Destruction and Magic Cylinder. The problem with his burn deck, however, for starters, is the fact that it doesn't go all the way with the strategy. Just like Merrick's deck, it spreads itself too thin with beat sticks and cards that mill. Another issue he has is that he doesn't have a card to stall with. So while he burns you for damage oftentimes, you'll find yourself doing more damage to him just by attacking. The last issue is that he has no way to replenish his hand once he runs out of ammo. Decks like this usually play jars and draw power cards to keep a gun loaded. But without these cards, he eventually runs out of cards and just folds. Just like the rest of the game so far, him and all the tier 5 duelists was just a major disappointment. I feel like I'm playing a game that had writer's block at some point of development. Well, this is it, the final stretch, level 6. This wouldn't be Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2004 without some arbitrary requirement to unlock it. Now don't worry, it's not as sick as the last few, but it rubs salt in the wound with all this padding that you had to go through already. In order to unlock level 6, you first must have dueled and won against each tier 5 duelist and win. The game went from 7 wins against tier 3 to 10 wins against tier 4 to 15 wins against tier 5. Remember the statement I made way earlier in the video that I dueled over 350 times? That's not an exaggeration. Now first you have to duel each of the level 1 duelists 3 times. However, because you need half the cards in each pack, you end up dueling them 10 times anyways. Also, eventually you have to duel them 10 times anyways because people in level 5 and 6 require it. That's 50 so far. You then have to duel each level 2 duelist 5 times at least. But since you need certain cards in certain packs that will only unlock after beating some of them 10 times, you end up dueling them 10 times anyways. Another 50. That's 100 duels in the first 1/3 of the game. Level 4 needs you to beat level 3 duelists 7 times at the least. But these guys unlock a pack once you beat them 10 times, so you're probably gonna duel them 10 times anyways. Plus, some of them are required to be beaten 10 times just for some of the level 5 duelists. 140. Now you gotta beat the level 4 guys 10 times. 190. And then you gotta duel the level 5 guys 15 times. 250 duels in total. Absolutely fucking insane. 250 duels of uninteresting decks, slow gameplay, slow UI, god-awful pacing, constant cheating whether it's illegal decks or deck stacking, Gamefaqs levels of unlock requirements, a limiting card pool since you can't pull multiple rares of the card until you complete the set of rares in the pack, which by the way, the majority of rares in this game are dog shit. So much batshit insane bad game design that can't hope to get any attention of any 8-year-old Yu-Gi-Oh player in 2003. Mind you, people had to play this to the end to compete in tournaments. Listen, I'm not a game designer, so I'm not really the type to call out good game design and bad game design. I usually find that kind of stuff corny. But even I have to draw the line and call a spade a spade. This shit is trash. Getting back to the game, there's one more thing you have to do to get the level 6 duelist, and you have to duel specific people 3 times in a row and then beat them on the 4th time. See, what happens on the 4th time is that they're replaced with the opponent that's in level 6. So if you duel Bakura 3 times, on the 4th time, it's Yami Bakura. If you duel Yugi 3 times, on the 4th time, it's Yami Yugi. So on and so on. Now, I would love to spend time to talk about level 6, but I feel like at this point, I'm a broken record because every problem that's in every other level still persists in level 6. Nothing changes at all. Merrick's deck is just upgraded to a worse version of his older deck, by the way. Yugi's deck is just plain trash. Simon is another Exodia deck. And Bakura is this shitty Destiny board deck. My god, it fucking sucks. What do you want me to say at this point for this game? I really wish I had something interesting to say about level 6, but it would have been the same stuff I said about level 5. Basically, they just like put Vorce Raiders and Slate Warriors in the deck and a bunch of Dark Holes and Raikekis, and then gave them this dumbass win condition that they will never achieve, and they just have a better chance beating you down with the Vorce Raider they added to their deck that they never had in the anime. This game just fucking sucks. I'm done. This was such a terrible game. I don't have a single positive experience with this. Once I beat them all, the credits roll. Do you want to know what I saw after the credits roll? A progression bar. They show you how many cards you collected overall in the game. Tell me, why did they show this after you beat the game and not before you beat the fucking game? Oh my god. And to make matters worse, remember in the beginning of the game where you need half the cards in the pack in order to unlock level 2? But you had no way to see how much you progress in a pack? Now there is a light bulb every time you get a brand new card in a pack. What was stopping this to be available from the start of the game?